Okay, where were we? The end of Back to the Future Part 2 is also the beginning of Back to the Future Part 3. If I showed you this image and asked you whether it's from 2 or 3, you'd have no idea. Both of these movies were shot back to back, and Part 2 was released November of 1989, then Part 3 followed 6 months later, in May of 1990, probably making it the shortest wait between a sequel and its predecessor, unless you count any of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Great Scott. So, what's with the Western theme? Maybe because Michael J. Fox always thought it would be cool for him to be in a Western? They must have figured that with one of his best film roles, that's how they format the third and final installment of the trilogy. The story picks up right where the last one left off. Marty and 1955 Doc find the DeLorean in a cave where it was hidden by older Doc in 1885, but then they find out that Doc was killed by Buford Mad Dog Tannen 6 days after he wrote the letter. The original instructions written in the letter states that Marty is to travel back to 1985 and destroy the time machine, but Marty feels that he needs to stop Doc from being shot. So he travels to 1885 dressed as a cowboy and... yeah, the story's just as crazy as the last two movies. You still get to deal with a bunch of weird running trends, such as a Tannen having it in for a McFly just for being at the cafe, or in this case, the saloon. By the way, all the Tannen family in these three movies are played by Thomas F. Wilson. There's literally no changes here in terms of casting choices for Biff's ancestor, who dates back to the Old West. But he's just about as humorous as he was in the other two movies. If there's one thing I don't care for in this movie, it's the relationship between Clara Clayton and Doc Brown. It all started when Clara's horse-drawn wagon loses control and would have plummeted down Shonash Ravine if Doc hadn't been there in time. All I gotta say is... what?! Wasn't Doc the one always saying we should never try to alter the past? As if that's not bad enough, the two fall in love. Oh, great. An old man from 1985 falls in love with a seemingly late in a young adulthood girl from 1885. I mean, really? Doesn't that seem a little bit out of character? I'm aware they don't know her real name until after they save her, and she was supposed to have had the ravine named after her because she fell in, but even then, Doc shouldn't have done that. But another note, you would think that the kiss shared between Doc and Clara would mark the first time Christopher Lloyd has kissed in a movie, but that honor would go to Clue in a scene between him and Leslie Ann Warren. On a few other notes, there's that scene where Marty prevents Doc from getting shot and everything's seemingly A-okay. But as it turns out, that grave is now to belong to Clint Eastwood, which is the alias Marty used while in the Old West. So Doc and Marty basically switch places, and appropriately, they switch catchphrases. Marty now says, "Great Scott," and Doc says, "I know, this is heavy." That's actually really hilarious once you understand the joke. The film still uses some of the running themes from the last two movies, such as Marty passing out and waking up where a family member of his lives. Wow, we just can't stop passing out in these movies and showing up in a McFly residence, can we? Remember when Doc used a bulletproof vest the first movie? Here in the third movie, Marty gets a similar idea when facing off with Buford. He places an iron stove door under his poncho to stop Mad Dog's bullet, then beats him up. Hey look, a Tannen gets doused in manure again. All three movies take us to 1955 and 1985. In the second scene in the trilogy, The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News plays. Then at the second to last scene of the whole trilogy, that same song plays as Marty's being challenged to a race which would cause Marty to get into an accident that broke his hand. There's a lot to keep track of, and the only way to catch all the connections within the trilogy is to watch these movies many, many, many times. Yeah, the third one is definitely not as great as the other two films. But who cares? It closes up the trilogy amazingly and leaves us with a good feeling after watching it. Maybe some of the decisions made were not the best, but I think that even with the third installment just being great rather than masterpiece quality, we have a perfect trilogy on our hands. After watching the whole trilogy, remember the words of Dr. Emmett L. Brown. Your future is whatever you make it, so make it a good one.